All right, we're going to do it again. Whoop, wrong light. Click. There we go. Now, in my previous discussion, we were talking about small reservations. And my challenge question is, what does this have to do with native literature? Well, let me put the microphone up here. That's better. Come over here like this. I mentioned that Singingeagle was wrong. What do I mean by that? Well, in one of my lectures, I said Canada doesn't really have small reserves like the US does, but I went back through the old dilapidated memory banks and realized, what the heck am I talking about? I'll show you. There we go. No, it's not going to work. Hang on while I go to the mouse keyboard. Gotta share a couple of things with you. This is the Peter Ballantine. There's a whole bunch of Peter Ballantine reserves in Canada. This is Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. This is the West Hill over here. There's the West Flat. There's the East Flat, and there's the East Hill. Doesn't look so much like a hill, but definitely if you're walking around out here, you'll realize, yep, it's a hill. You can kind of see the incline right there. Anyway, I mentioned before a long time ago when some crazy Indian from the States, who's a border Indian actually, moved to Canada and taught at First Nations University, which is like right here in downtown Prince Albert. The people who were driving him around said, whatever you do, stay out of the West Flat. That's where a bunch of riffraff Indians live. They always get into trouble. And that's where all the poverty is and all the crime is. So what is the first thing the crazy Indian did? He went to the West Flat, bought a house right on the riverfront. Show you. Fine, you don't want to work? I'll click on it like this. There we go. So here's Prince Albert. Here is the West Flat. Over here, East Flat, West Hill, East Hill. This is where all the crazy Indians, the poor Indians, and the crime Indians used to hang out and probably still do. But they were my kind of people. But we won't go there. Yeah, so Singingeagle bought a house like right here. Anyway, what does this have to do with literature? If you look at our textbook, our read, listen, tell textbook, you're going to see that some of the natives talk about this, where they have, this is a city, relatively, compared to U.S. cities, it's kind of small, but for Canada, it's a medium-sized city, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. It's sort of like 4 Sissetons. So Sisseton over here, Sisseton here, Sisseton here, something like that. And they have that little bitty one skyscraper in the whole town. And yeah, it's a pretty decent sized town. And the kids who live in this city, the natives who live here, they got some land. This land, which I showed you a second ago. Show you again. This used to be a boarding school, or as they call it in Canada, a residential school. And then I believe it was a Catholic one. I'm not sure if it was Anglican or Roman Catholic, but it closed down and the Indians inherited the land somehow and they turned it into a reserve. It's itty bitty. It's not much bigger than our college, as you can see. And that's a big thing in Canada. They even have some tribal housing somewhere. It's probably over there. And then, of course, a lot of the Indians live in the town down there on the West Flat, like I said before. and they all have to go to school together with the non-native kids. They mention this in the literature that we read. By the way, let's talk about the California and the West US reservations for a minute. Nope. Before I get into that, I forgot to show you some more of the various. Most of these guys are Cree, but there's some Dakota, Wahpeton. They call them Wahpeton up there. I'll show you. Go back. Ow, wrong one. Right. Zoom out. Ah. There's Wahpeton, or that's what they call them, Wahpeton. Maybe it is pronounced Wahpeton. We say Wahpeton in the U.S., but they say Wahpeton. The Wahpeton Dakota Nation is there, and they speak the same language. This is the Muscadet. I used to hang out there a lot, but old man Singingeagle is trying to show you these little bitty reserves. There's another one called Saskatchewan, which is where I used to run sweats with the other natives. Where is it? There it is, Saskatchewan. It's a little itty bitty place. And I remember because the tribe had just bought the land and they turned it into a reserve. And there it is right there. And Singingeagle with his First Nations Orthodox Church. I was one of the priests that we ran sweats and pipe ceremonies, but I'm talking too much about me, I apologize. Let's go to the States now. There it is. The resolution of this map is awful. Again, I apologize. I have this map in my office up on the bulletin board, and it shows the United States reservations. You look at it and notice something. Big reservations. Medium-sized reservations in the Midwest. Oklahoma used to be one big giant reservation. Eastern area, well, not so much. And then a whole bunch of what we call pueblos in the Southwest, especially in New Mexico. But if you look and you try to zoom in on California, you'll realize something. Prime real estate. So what happened is a lot of the tribes, they inherited land or somebody donated land or they bought a square block of land. They petitioned the government to turn it into a reservation. And of course, the local yokels get all their panties up in a bunch about, oh, you're just going to build a casino. It's like, too bad, we're going to build a casino. So that's what's going on. These itty bitty, teeny tiny reservations are called rancherias. And as you remember, I mentioned before, old man Singingeagle was born in LA, spent a lot of time on the Morongo Res, which is out here in the desert. And then, as an undergrad, moved to Santa Barbara after spending time in the military and went to the Chumash, hung out with the Chumash over here in Santa Barbara. Now remember, these guys were all dirt poor back in the 70s and 80s, and then they realized, well, we can build a bingo hall, which they did, and they started making money, and then they petitioned the government some more and said, hey, we can turn these bingo halls into casinos. And that's what they did. So all these little itty teeny tiny itty bitty dots are reservations called rancherias. And it's unique primarily to the West Coast, but they also have some in Mexico as well. Again, how does this relate to literature? Well, it shows up in some of our various writings. That's what I wanted to bother you with. How did I do on time? 9 minutes. Okay. The other thing I'm going to bother you with coming up in a separate video, I'm going to sit and read Goodbye Snoke. I think that's from the Northwest Coast. Read, listen, tell, page 111. There's also a segment where I interview Laura Tohi, who tries to be a RLI maneuver, where she says, I don't want to be on a video, which is kind of strange because she's got a whole bunch of videos. If you click on it, where is it? My course is Dakota 210. I'm going to go back. Hang on. Almost. There she is. So she let the corporate recorders do it, but she won't let do a one-on-one with me. I don't know what that's all about. But yeah, a lot of times the Navajo, they don't like for cameras to steal their souls, as they say. I remember I dated a couple of girls, Navajo girls, way back in the old. Never mind, stop talking. Bad teacher. All right, what else? And so I have a video segment where I talk about her biography, what she did, how she grew up, where she went to school, all that fun stuff. So look at it. What else? What else? What else? What else? And then I have a discussion where I talk about where is it? There it is, right there. Common characteristics. What makes Native literature unique from mainstream, and how are in some ways we're the same, and some ways we are different. This is from some of the things I realized as I was taking notes at the South Dakota Festival of Books last semester, last fall, that is. So have a look at that as well. You can click on it, which is going to be here, where I talk about Freytag's Pyramid. I talk about Borders and Campbell's Hero's Journey. So have a look at that as well. Anything else I need to remind you about? Yes, there is. That is, if you have not done Pop Quiz B, right now I only have 2 people who have done it. Jump on it, because midterms are coming. I already showed you what that looked like. Here's the links to those maps that I just showed you a second ago, and that's all for now. Thank you so much. Talk later. 12 minutes and 39 seconds.